Had this watch in my cupboard waiting for review for a few months now. As a matter of fact, there were a few versions of this watch, one with a tachometer scale on the bezel, which is kind of useless on a dive watch unless you want to time the speed of a goldfish while diving. Well, the version that came after sorted out the tachometer marking issue, but then the manufacturer forgot to put a lume on a 12 o'clock beep, which is a pretty important little detail for a dive watch. So when this version came out, I thought I'll rather wait until they need to fix anything else. Well, the good news is that this version seemed to have all the issues I just mentioned resolved and it ticks all the boxes, at least at first glance. But is it any good? Well, you probably guessed it. In this video, we'll try to find out. Hello and welcome back. If this is not the first or even not the second time you're watching my reviews, then this could be a secret sign that you need to subscribe to my channel. Right. A quick disclaimer, Seestern stock on AliExpress did send me this watch for review and I don't have to send it back. In return, I agree to provide a comprehensive review of this watch and share my opinion about it. Of course, there will be a link to the listing of this watch and to the Seestern store on AliExpress in the description of this video. They have a pretty cool collection of watches there, so I recommend you do check them out. Bit of a spoiler alert, but right from the start I'll have to say that this diver is quite well put together. It feels solid and well finished, and of course it has that bright, vibrant and even somewhat funky orange colorway and design. And by the way, Seestern offers a few other colorways, some more subdued and some as bright and vibrant as this one, even a mother of pearl option, so you can pick one which is suited to your taste. Well, a quick word about design. Even though the execution is quite impressive, Seestern can't exactly claim all the credit. This is of course a homage to a Doxa sub 300 diver watch, which actually has very interesting history and pedigree and has a fairly strong following in the watch collectors community. Now, getting back to the Seestern Diver, if you noticed a numerous depiction of starfish throughout the branding on this watch, it is actually for a reason. It is because the word Seestern means starfish in German and not some kind of a bucket for storing water, as might appear to the English-speaking audience. A word about the price. During AliExpress specials, which take place every so many weeks, this watch retailed for around 165-ish US, and even during normal times it is not that much more expensive. Does this watch represent a good price-value package though? Well, we'll come to it a bit later in this video. Now, of course, we can check the dimensions on the listing of this watch on AliExpress. However, as you probably already know, I prefer to measure the actual watch for my reviews. So, the case width measured across from 3 to 9 o'clock is 42.5 millimeters. Bezel diameter is 38.5 millimeters, and we have 20 millimeter lug width here. The case height is 13.9 millimeters, not very high, but not the slimmest either. Lug tip to lug tip is 45 millimeters, which is good news if you have a slim wrist, that is around 6 inches in circumference, give or take. Comfortable beads of rice style bracelet has a slight taper to it, down to about 18 millimeters at the clasp. The full length of the bracelet will cover just over 8¼ inch wrist, or about 21 centimeter in circumference. And on the supply stainless steel bracelet, this watch weighs 172 grams. A bit hefty, however, adjusted to my 7-inch wrist, the weight goes down to 160 grams. I'm happy with the weight of this watch, however, quite a bit of that weight is in the watch head, which makes it ever so slightly top-heavy. I will talk about it in more detail when we take a closer look at the bracelet. And here is the watch on my about 7-inch wrist. Case. Further examining the case, it is a solid 316L stainless steel construction. We have a circular brushing on top of the case and mirror polished flanks. The finishing is consistent and of a good quality, which is good. We also have drilled lugs here, which is a nice touch and makes replacing the strap a much simpler affair. We have a signed screw-down crown with nice engraving of a starfish. There are no crown guards per se, however, the crown sits halfway in the case and as such is well protected from any side bumps. There is a rubber gasket at the crown opening, which is a welcome feature, helping with dust protection and water resistance. The crown is well proportioned and is easy to operate. The back of the case also features a circular brushing and a solid screw-on back case. I like the depiction of the wave, very much reminiscent of the Great Wave of Kanagawa and, of course, the starfish. The engraving has a nice depth to it, and it looks like it was molded and then further finished rather than actually just engraved. And we also see the highlight of the specs of this watch on the back case. 316 stainless steel, depth rating, and of course sapphire crystal, which we'll take a look at in more detail in a moment. And yes, Seestern declares 200 meters of water resistance on this watch, which is of course makes it suitable for swimming and even some recreational diving. Bezel. This watch has a 120-click unidirectional bezel made of solid piece of metal, very similar in appearance to the case of this watch. It is most likely stainless steel, however, I'm not sure, so if you do know, do let us know in the comments. The bezel is about 3 mm high and has a comfortable grip to it. The top of the bezel has two facets with circular brushing, and they feature a loomed peep at 12 o'clock position and two scales, one for minutes and another one for so-called non-decompression limit, which could be used by the divers ascending back to the surface who don't want to get a decompression sickness. These days, you are most likely to use a specialized dive computer for this type of measurement. As for the bezel action, the bezel has a good resistance and a solid tactile and reassuring feel to it. There is very little play, and the bezel on my watch aligns pretty much perfectly. I would say that the bezel action is on par with some much more expensive Seika divers that I handled in the past. Bracelet. It is one of the highlights of this watch, a so-called bits of rice style. It is comfortable and flexible and yet feels good and solid with good tolerances. We have solid end-links here. The end-links fit to the case quite well. There is almost no play. The end-links also are inverted, which is a good thing, and allow for even more bracelet flexibility to drape nicely around the wrist. The bracelet links are also solid and well finished. The bracelet has 5 polished pieces in the middle and brushed parts on the outside, which are again polished on the outer facets. This combination of polished and brushed surfaces give the bracelet a somewhat premium look. The links are held together by pins, which do the job just fine and which I think is okay at this price point. We then come to the clasp, and while the clasp features a milled scissor mechanism and a double-action lock, the outer shell is made of pressed steel. Not the end of the world, however, I think this watch would benefit from a solid metal clasp. A solid clasp will not only go more in line with the rest of the premium finish of this timepiece, but will also help to balance out the chunky head of this watch, making it a bit less top-heavy. Having said that, this is a quite common 18mm size clasp, so if you are really not happy with it, you can easily replace it for another one. There are plenty of good affordable clasps on AliExpress. On the positive side, I like the engraved branding on the clasp, and I also like 4 macro adjustments, which will help to fine-tune the fit of this already comfortable bracelet. Dial. This watch comes with this bright orange dial, which is very much in line with the color Doxa uses on their dive watches. The minute chaptering and other markings are printed on the dial. The print is clean and crisp. The branding is also printed. Even under close inspection, the dial looks well executed. The hour markers are also printed on the dial and are covered with lume. We have black hands, the hands are filled with lume as well. And we have a nicely framed date window. And by the way, the date is lumed on this watch too. In general, the watch is very legible, and the orange dial definitely stands out and works well with the rest of the aesthetics of this watch. It looks premium, and yet it is clearly a diver tool watch. Lume is okay, it is not as strong as on some other divers I reviewed in the past, however, it is enough to keep this watch legible in the dark or as we transition from light to dark areas. Crystal. We have a flat sapphire crystal here. It sits ever so slightly below the top level of the bezel. The crystal deals quite well with all kind of reflections, and even though there are no mention of any air coating in the specification of this watch, the dial is very legible, so I suspect there is some kind of coating applied, and of course a bright clear orange dial helps legibility as well. Movement. And I guess we need to talk about the movement. Seestern put a proven and reliable Seiko NH35 movement in the back of this watch. It is reputable automatic mechanical movement which hacks. It can be hand-wind and it has 41 hours of power reserve. It beats at 21,600 vibrations per hour, and in my opinion it is perfectly suited to this watch. Before we get to the conclusion, if you find this review helpful, please do hit that like button. YouTube algorithm apparently really likes it. So, what are my final thoughts on this watch? I like that Seestern addressed customers' feedback and nailed all the required functionality in this version of this watch. Right markings on the bezel and loomed peep, and apparently this one has the best bezel action. The build execution is also very decent, and coming back to my comment on the price of this watch in the beginning of this video, I think this watch represents a very solid price-value proposition. Yes, there are a couple of compromises that I think could have been done better, like maybe a stronger loom and more premium clasp. However, neither of these would be a deal breakers for me, not at this price point anyway. What are your thoughts? Do share with us in the comments, and as always, don't forget to subscribe, and of course take care, stay safe, and I will see you in the next video.